Well, Russia's President Vladimir Putin spoke today before participants of the International Valdai Discussion Club in Sochi. There, he had some very harsh words for the U.S., accusing Washington of repeating old mistakes. RT's Egor Piskunov has a look at that speech.
It's already been deemed as Putin's strongest speech in many years. The president lashed out at the United States for unilaterally imposing its agenda and its business all across the world, often ignoring rules and punishing those who disagree, either with force, blackmail, or sanctions.
There are many tried and tested ways of influencing insubordinates. There are military actions, economic ones, and propaganda pressure. There is interference into domestic affairs, and there are appeals to some above-the-law legitimacy when it's needed to justify the unlawful regulation of conflicts. There is suppression of unwanted regimes. In recent years, we had evidence that certain leaders have been literally blackmailed. It's not in vain that the so-called Big Brother has been spending billions of dollars on spying around the world, also spying on his close allies.
The president also accused the West of failing to learn from its mistakes, reminding how a long time ago, during the Soviet Union's campaign in Afghanistan, military campaign in Afghanistan, many Western nations and Washington specifically trained and supplied jihadists there who were fighting against Soviet troops with weapons, and then they were forced to fight these jihadists themselves in the face of Al-Qaeda or the Taliban. And now we're seeing the emergence of ISIS, which pretty much emerged from, largely from the rebels in Syria, who also were supported openly by many Western nations, including financially and with arms. And now ISIS isn't only fighting against the same exact Western nations, but is also destroying the Middle East.
In Syria, the United States and its allies have begun directly to finance and send arms to the fighters there. They began encouraging filling their ranks with mercenaries from different countries. Let me just ask this: where are the militants getting the money from, their weapons from, and their military specialists from? How did it come about that this so-called ISIS turned into a powerful group, practically an army?
Vladimir Putin was also asked a question about the different approach in the West to the reunification of Russia and Crimea, and here's what he had to say on that.
You know, in this case, I'm always happy to recall what the ancients said. Do you remember the wonderful phrase, "Gods may do what cattle may not"? Well, we can't agree to such a statement. Maybe cattle may not be allowed, but I'd like to say the bear will not ask anybody's permission. Generally, he's considered to own the taiga. And I know for sure he's not going to move to other climate zones. He doesn't feel comfortable there. But I think it should be clear he will not give his taiga to anybody.
Moscow is open for dialogue as long as it's aimed at building a reliable and stable security system, since according to the president, without rules, the world will fall into chaos.
That was RT correspondent Egor Piskunov.